The sun was rising over the wide valley of the Mississippi, casting long streaks of orange light across the water. Mist clung to the reeds and the surface of the river shone like hammered copper. The people of Cahokia, one of the largest ancient settlements of the Americas, stirred awake as smoke curled upward from their morning fires. The wooden palisades creaked in the breeze, and the sound of pounding maize echoed from the granaries. Among the many who rose early was a young woman named Aiyana. Her name meant, "eternal blossom," in the tongue of her people. She was slender, with dark braids falling to her waist, and eyes that reflected both patience and quiet strength. Aiyana was the daughter of Nodin, a respected craftsman known for shaping flint blades and ceremonial pipes. Though her father's work gave her family status, Aiyana was often caught between the expectations of tradition and the restless stirrings of her own spirit. She loved the morning river, its secrets and its silence. While others looked upon it as a place of trade and harvest, Aiyana felt it spoke in voices too old for most to hear. This morning, she carried a basket of woven reeds filled with offerings, cornmeal, dried berries, and a carved shell. Her steps were light as she crossed the wooden causeway that led to the sacred mound at the edge of the settlement. The mound rose like a green hill sculpted by human hands, its slopes firm with earth carried by generations. To climb it was to walk on history itself. Aiyana paused halfway up, catching her breath, and looked out at the valley. She could see the clustered homes, the tall wooden temple, and beyond them the river winding like a silver snake. Birds wheeled high, their cries cutting across the sky. At the top of the mound stood an elder, Tallis. His back was bent but his voice still carried with strength. He was the keeper of stories, one of the few who remembered the deep tales passed from ancestors to children. Tallis nodded as Aiyana approached. "You come before the sun is high," he said, his voice rough but warm. "That is when the river speaks clearest." Aiyana bowed her head. "I have brought the offerings, as you asked." He motioned to the flat stone altar. She placed the cornmeal, the berries, and the carved shell carefully, as though setting them before unseen guests. Tallis closed his eyes, murmuring words in the old tongue. His chants were low, flowing like water. Aiyana listened, her heartbeat slowing. When he finished, he looked at her with eyes dark as river mud. "The mound remembers," he said. "The river remembers. But the people forget too easily. That is why you must listen." "Why me?" she asked softly. "Because the river has chosen. Last night I dreamed of a blossom carried by the current, refusing to sink. It traveled far, and where it rested, new life rose. The dream is you, Aiyana." She was silent. The weight of his words pressed against her chest. She wanted to protest, to say she was only a young woman with no special gift, but something in his gaze silenced her. Just then, a horn's deep note carried from the settlement below. The morning council was beginning. Tallis nodded for her to go. "The chiefs gather. Soon, choices will be made that shape not only your days, but your children's children. Go, and listen." The council house was the heart of Cahokia, a broad structure of timber with a roof thatched from reeds. Inside, the chiefs of clans gathered on mats, their hair adorned with feathers, shells, or carved beads marking their rank. At the center, a fire burned low, smoke curling toward the open roof. The air was thick with the smell of roasted maize and smoldering cedar. Chief Waya, broad-shouldered and stern, presided over the meeting. His voice carried like a drum. "The traders from the north come soon. They bring copper, obsidian, and stories of new lands. But there is talk of unrest. Villages along the river have been burned. We must decide. Do we strengthen our walls, or do we send warriors?" Murmurs rippled through the council. Aiyana sat quietly near the edge, allowed in only because she carried water for her father. But her ears were sharp. She heard the tension in every word. The North had always been a place of both wealth and threat. Trade brought power, but power always drew envy. Her father, Nodin, spoke carefully. "Our people thrive because we trade. If we greet fear with closed gates, we will starve our own future." But another voice, deep and fiery, countered. It was Chief Kanuna, a warrior with scars across his arms. "And if we greet danger with open arms, we will lose more than our future, we will lose our children. The river brings strangers, and strangers bring blades." Arguments rose, the voices clashing like flint against stone. Aiyana felt her chest tighten. She glanced toward the fire, where the smoke curled in restless shapes. For a moment, she thought she saw it form the outline of a bird in flight, wings stretching wide, then vanish. She blinked, unsure if her mind played tricks. By the end of the council, no decision was made. The chiefs agreed to meet again in 2 days. But the unease lingered. Outside, people whispered of war, of omens, of dreams. That night, Aiyana walked alone to the river. The moon was nearly full, its light painting the water silver. She knelt at the bank, letting the cool waves wash over her fingers. Somewhere downstream, drums thudded faintly, carrying from another village. She closed her eyes and listened. The river's voice was always there, low, endless, and patient. She whispered, "What do you want from me?" The current lapped against the shore, tugging at reeds, carrying driftwood past her. And then, as if in answer, something floated toward her. She leaned forward and caught it before it drifted away. It was a carved piece of wood, shaped into the head of a bird, its feathers etched with care. But it was broken, as if torn from something larger. Her breath caught. She turned it in her hands. The symbol of the bird was sacred, messenger between worlds, spirit of vision. Why had this piece come to her, carried by the current in the very moment of her question? Behind her, a voice spoke. "The river answers." She spun around. Talus stood in the moonlight, staff in hand. His face looked carved by time, but his eyes were alive with knowing. "The bird calls you to journey," he said. "It will not be an easy path. But you must follow, for the fate of many rides on it." Aiyana held the broken carving close, fear and wonder tangled in her chest. She wanted to ask more, but Talus only lifted his staff toward the moon. "Sleep, child. Tomorrow the chiefs will quarrel again. But remember, when the river gives, it is not by chance." Morning returned, bringing with it the restless hum of daily life. Farmers walked to fields, children chased each other between huts, traders prepared their packs. Yet beneath the ordinary rhythms, tension thickened like a storm building in the distance. Aiyana tried to continue her tasks, grinding maize, helping her mother with pottery, but her mind kept returning to the carving. She had hidden it under her sleeping mat, though it seemed to hum faintly even in silence, as though it carried a voice too soft for most ears. By evening, her father came home weary, his hands stained from shaping flint. He noticed her distraction. "You have been quiet, my blossom. What troubles you?" She hesitated, then drew out the carving. "This came from the river last night." Nodin frowned, taking it carefully. His fingers traced the broken edges. This was once part of a ceremonial staff. "See here, the grooves match the style of the northern villages. Strange that it would float so far south. Is it an omen?" she asked. He looked at her steadily. "Everything is an omen, if you listen long enough. The question is not what it means, but what you will do with it." His words gave her no comfort, but they lodged deep in her mind. That night, Aiyana dreamed. She stood again by the river, but this time it was swollen, rushing wild as if in flood. The broken bird carving in her hand glowed faintly. Across the water, she saw a figure, a man, tall, with hair braided and feathers at his crown. His face was shadowed, but his voice carried across the roar. "Come," he called. "The river chooses." She tried to step forward, but the current surged, pulling at her feet. She woke with a start, sweat dampening her brow. The dream clung to her like cobwebs. Outside, a drumbeat echoed faintly in the distance. It was not the sound of celebration. It was the sound of warriors marching. The drumbeat did not stop through the night. It came in waves, low and steady, carried across the dark fields from the north. Each beat seemed to echo inside Aiyana's chest. When dawn broke, the settlement of Cahokia woke not with the usual rhythm of grinding stones and cheerful children, but with silence and watchful eyes. Smoke curled from cook fires, but even the birds seemed uneasy. The chiefs gathered again in the council house, their faces drawn. Aiyana went with her father, though she kept her secret, both the broken bird carving and the dream of the shadowed man. She felt its weight pressing on her spirit like a stone. Chief Waya spoke first. "Scouts have returned. A war party moves along the river. They burn villages and take captives. They come south." The room buzzed with fear. Chief Kanuna, fists clenched, leaned forward. "Then there is no more debate. We send warriors now." But Nodin raised his voice. "And what then? Their numbers grow with every village they take. We cannot meet the river with only spears. We must seek another path. Kanuna slammed his palm against the ground mat. Another path. When enemies stand at our gate, only strength answers strength. Aiyana felt her throat tighten. Words rose in her chest, but who would hear them? She was no chief, no warrior, no elder. Yet when her eyes drifted to the smoke twisting above the council fire, she saw again that fleeting shape of a bird spreading its wings. Something in her broke loose. She stood. The river chooses. The room stilled. Dozens of eyes turned toward her. The fire popped. Chief Waya frowned. You are Noden's daughter. Why do you speak in a council of chiefs? Aiyana's voice shook, but she held her ground. Because the river has given a sign. Last night it placed this in my hands. She lifted the broken carving. The elders leaned forward, murmuring as the light flickered across its feathered design. Talus, the keeper of stories, rose slowly, his staff tapping against the floor. It is true. The river gives what must be heard. This carving comes from the north, from people who walk a path older than ours. It is no accident it reached her. Kanuna scoffed. Are we to place our fate in driftwood? But Talus's eyes were sharp. Not in driftwood. In what it means. The bird is the messenger between worlds. It comes broken, carried by the river. So too comes a choice. To fight as we always have, or to follow what we do not yet understand. Aiyana clutched the carving tighter. She felt the eyes of every chief pressing down on her, but she also felt the steady heartbeat of the river within herself. I dreamed of a man on the far bank, she said quietly. He called me. I think the river is asking me to go. The council erupted in disbelief. Women outside whispered, men shook their heads. Aiyana's father stared at her, torn between pride and fear. Chief Waya raised his hand. Silence fell again. His gaze was heavy. You are not a warrior. You are not a chief. Yet the river does not always choose the strong. If this is true, then go. But know this. If you fail, our people may fall with you. That evening, while the village watched with unease, Aiyana prepared for the journey. Her mother pressed dried maize cakes into her hands. Her father gave her a small flint knife, though he knew it was no protection against what lay ahead. Talus gave her only a word. Listen. She walked to the riverbank as the sun bled red across the horizon. A canoe waited, slender, carved from a single trunk. She pushed it into the water, stepped in, and let the current take her. The murmurs of her people faded behind her, replaced by the endless voice of the river. For days she drifted, paddling only when she must. At night she slept beneath the stars, the broken bird carving tied around her neck with cord. She passed burned villages, blackened timbers jutting from the ground like teeth. The silence of those places cut her deeper than any blade. Once, she saw movement, a boy hiding in the reeds, eyes wide with fear. When she reached for him, he fled like a deer. On the fourth night, the dream returned. The man with the feathered crown stood again on the far shore. His face was clearer now, stern but not cruel. He raised his hand, beckoning her. When she woke, mist covered the water. Through it she saw fires flickering on the northern bank. She had found them. The camp of the northern warriors was larger than she expected. Dozens of fires glowed, figures moved like shadows. Some sharpened spears, others chanted low songs. The smell of smoke and sweat hung heavy. Aiyana's canoe drifted close until men spotted her. Shouts rose, spears lifted. She did not move. She raised the carving high in her hand. The camp fell silent. Then a tall man stepped forward. He wore a crown of feathers and a mantle of fur across his shoulders. His face was the same as in her dream. His eyes studied her, not with surprise, but as if he had expected her all along. He spoke in a tongue she partly understood, kin to her own people's. Why does the river bring you here? Aiyana's voice trembled, but she forced the words. Because the bird is broken. Because you burn villages, and the river does not accept it. A murmur spread among his warriors. Some laughed, others scowled. But the chief raised his hand. He looked at the carving, then at her. You carry part of what was once mine, he said. It was broken in battle. The river has chosen its path. He motioned for her to come ashore. Guards flanked her, but none touched her. She was led to the largest fire. The chief sat across from her. My name is Mosca, he said. We march south because the old ways rot. The river grows crowded with villages who forget respect. We take what we must. Aiyana met his gaze. And when nothing is left, what will you take then? For a moment, silence stretched between them. The fire crackled. Finally, Mosca leaned forward. What do you seek, girl of the south? She touched the carving at her chest. To mend what is broken. To stop the river from bleeding red. Mosca's eyes narrowed, but not in anger. He studied her as if weighing something. Then he rose suddenly and called to his people. Words flowed sharp and quick. Some shouted in agreement, others in protest. At last he turned back to her. You are brave, braver than the chiefs who hide behind walls. I will give you this. Walk with us tomorrow. See with your own eyes what we face. Then speak again. The next day, Aiyana walked with the northern warriors along the river. She saw their hunger, their children carried on backs, their women with tired eyes. They were not only raiders, they were people, driven by scarcity, their old lands exhausted. She felt her chest ache. By evening, they reached another village. Warriors prepared to attack. Aiyana stepped forward, her voice rising. Stop. Mosca watched her. This is what must be done. No, she said. She held up the carving. The bird is broken, but it can be mended. Not with fire, with joining. The warriors murmured, uneasy. Mosca's eyes burned. And how do you mend what is already torn? She looked at the river, endless and patient. By carrying together. One bank cannot stand without the other. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, Mosca lowered his spear. His men hesitated, but followed. The village was spared. Weeks later, Aiyana returned to Cahokia, not with an army at her back, but with emissaries. The northern people came not as raiders, but as partners, carrying goods to trade. Suspicion filled the air, but there was no blood. In the council house, Chief Waya asked, What have you done? Aiyana set the carving on the fire's edge. I did not fight. I listened. The river does not choose war or peace, it chooses balance. That is our path. Talus nodded, his voice rough but steady. So the blossom carried by the river has taken root. Her father placed a hand on her shoulder, silent with pride. Years later, when Aiyana was old, she would sit by the mound with children gathered at her feet. She told them not of battles, nor of chiefs, but of the river's choice. She held the mended carving, the bird now whole again, feathered wings spread wide. And she said, Remember this, the river carries all. If we break it, we break ourselves. If we listen, it carries us farther than we dream. The children listened, eyes wide. Beyond them, the river flowed on, whispering its endless song.